Hello and welcome to The Real Franchise, a video series designed to deliver real information, real answers, and real insights into franchising. This video series is brought to you by James Home Services Australia. I'm Justin Kelly, one of the owners, and together we tackle all the big topics, unscripted, unplanned, and unfiltered. So there's no sales fluff, sorry. We're just going to give you information straight up. And in today's episode, I'm joined by our CEO, Rhiannon Simcox. Welcome, Rhiannon.
Thanks.
Well, Rhiannon, over the years, as you know, we have talked to thousands and thousands of people that are going through various forms of transition. And, you know, some people obviously choose to go into a job. Some people decide to start a business. Some people decide to further education is another, obviously very valid pathway. One of the things I think that we've both seen clearly through, our interactions over the years is that good decisions are not usually fast decisions. And good decisions, I find people really can be very fearful, nervous, scared, going through it. That's all normal. I get nervous when people aren't scared at all and go, I'm going down this path. I go, no, she's all right, mate. I'm more cool. So today, what I wanted to really look at is helping people come up with a simple process, simple way of evaluating what is the right choice for them. Because I think in particularly the three different areas that I just mentioned, employment, business, or further education, there's no right or wrong. It's more about the individual, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Everybody has a different current situation and everybody has a different ideal destination. And I think that what most people don't spend enough time thinking about is ideal destination. Where do you want to get to? What do you want this to be in 2, 5, 10, 20 years' time? And it's not necessarily about planning a path for the rest of your life that you're going to stick to like glue. It's more about having an understanding that the decisions you make today are writing where you get to in the future. And I think that too many people jump into business ownership as a quick fix or as it sounds fun, so I'm going to do it, or I hate my boss, so I want to out of work and I'm going to start my own business, because I think it's almost a knee-jerk reaction, right? You have a job or you're employed. You have a job or you're the boss. And I think what we don't do enough is think about how do we actually make the decision about starting our business and what does that decision-making process look like?
Excellent. And that's what we're going to dive into right now, isn't it, that whole process. And I guess in looking at this discussion, we've gone, this is too much for one session. So if you're listening to this is the first part. We've got another part that we're going to film on this. But so today, really, I think there's three key questions that we use to evaluate what potentially could be the right next step for an individual. So I've got some slides to support us for us to talk off, and for those that are watching, if you're watching this, I hope this assists you in that. So I guess the first thing that I'd like to talk about, the first question to ask yourself, if this is you in this sort of position, transitioning out of the defence or FIFO or out of a normal career, and you're looking at change. I guess the first big question is, where do you want to go? And I guess that's what you were sort of touching on, isn't it, Rhiannon? That I think we tend to jump. If we're not happy in a situation, we just jump into something. The very first thing that's put in front of us almost.
Yeah.
I guess, what have you seen as some of the potential dangers of that you mentioned, the knee-jerk reaction?
Well, you end up on a path that doesn't actually take you to the destination you want to get to eventually. You choose employment where, actually you need the freedom and the flexibility of being your own boss so that you can do the things with your kids that you need to be able to do. You're always going to feel out of alignment because working for someone 9 to 5 and answering to their schedule doesn't allow you to do the things that you want. But bigger picture than that, what are you looking for in 2, 5, 10, 20 years' time? Are you looking to build wealth? Are you looking to build skills? Is it important to you that you feel you are the controller of exactly where you end up in life rather than simply, trudging into the office every single day, day in, day out? I think people don't really sit down and think about that bigger question often enough before they jump into business ownership. And I think that's exactly what we're looking at on this screen is, path A, and this is sort of looking at, as a generalisation, path A is more the sorts of things that come with employment, and path B is more the sorts of things that come with self-employment or building a business of your own. And I think that you've got to really sit back and analyse what it is you want, because if you want freedom, flexibility, control, growth, ownership, building a vehicle to get you somewhere else in life, building wealth that will allow you to retire early, building a schedule that allows you to be available to aging parents, then if those are the things that you want and need out of the next decade of your life, there's a really good argument to say that a 9 to 5 grind ain't ever going to deliver that to you, and you're always going to feel stuck.
Yep. And I've seen that over my career, like employing people and even looking at people joining our business. When you go sometimes through resumes, you'll just see, every 6, 12 months, this individual has changed from job to job to job to job. And I think part of it often is that it's that knee jerk and not really sitting down and just having a good think with themselves, with their partner. Where are we going and what do we value? It's a lot about, I think, what I want someone watching this to get out of this: value yourself and where you want to go, because otherwise we get stuck in the rut we often hear mentioned, and the road, like this picture is trying to illustrate, can take us down the garden path, so to speak, down a road that we had no intention of going down.
Yeah.
And it's your life, you're in control of it, and you're responsible for the decisions that will end up placing you on one path or another.
Yeah.
So I really want to encourage anyone listening to this to take the time and just look at some of these things that are on the screen. What is it that you really want? What do you really value?
Yeah. I think, what we're trying to do in these 2 sessions is give anybody listening, viewing, however you're consuming this, it's a self-assessment. It's not us standing here saying, this is what employment looks like and this is what owning a business looks like. You should do A or B. This is us saying, here are 3 simple questions to ask yourself, and the answers will guide you to what may be best suited to what you actually want in life. And the first question is the biggest and the hardest question of all. Where do you want to get to? And I want to break this slide down into one step further, because most people, I think you would agree, most people you speak to, if you were to say to them, hey, where do you want to be in 10 years' time? Most people would go, man, I don't know. I don't really think that far ahead, right? Because not many of us do. So here's a really simple question to ask yourself if you're not sure where you want to be in 10 years' time, right? Take the pressure of that question off and then answer this one instead. Tell me what it looks like. Tell me what a great life in 10 years for you and your wife or your partner or you yourself and you, if you're flying solo. Just think about what that looks like. There's no right or wrong, only right or wrong for you. And so if the big picture scares you, it's normal. It's probably because you haven't thought about it before, but it's where you have to start. Before you dump in and think, I want to own a business or I want to work as an employee or I'm going to buy an existing business, before you can think about what your options are, you have to make sure that what you're choosing is actually going to be the vehicle to get you where you want to go. And if considering the destination is something you haven't done before, just take the pressure off. Don't worry about goal setting. Don't worry about trying to, figure out how to get there. Just ask yourself, what does it look like? Because there's this term I really love. It's called reverse engineering. You figure out what the destination is, then you figure out the pathway. And that's exactly what we're talking about today.
Yep. Excellent. Well, I think that probably leads us to our next question, which actually might take some explaining.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can spend a little bit more time on this one.
Yes, because this is a bit deep. What are you comparing? Now, I'll explain what I mean by that question. I've heard lately this term, which I love. I use it all the time now. Us Aussie blokes tend to be what we call the barbecue mafia, which is the term barbecue mafia. We'll get together with our mates and we'll talk about, hey, I'm thinking of changing, and we'll each have, you'll hear some guy go, oh, yeah, mate, get your own business. I know such and he's absolutely killing it. Or someone else will go, oh, no, don't touch business. Oh, I know such and such, they did really poorly. Or, yeah, you need to get a job, man, I heard such and such is doing so good in a job. And we're not comparing apples for apples. I think back to our first question, what is it you want to get out of it? And then really compare don't compare worst case with best case is what I'm trying to say. Sit down and have an objective view on what's important to you and what's not so important. And so we created this little table here for you, if you're watching this, to use. And Rhiannon, I might let you jump in and explain how to use what we're looking at here.
Yeah, we've tried to keep this as simple as possible and as practical as possible, with an idea that as we are yapping away, you're probably already skipping and reading ahead and you're starting to put ticks in boxes, right? And so you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a couple of boxes. I mean, obviously down the middle, we've got all the different elements that typically you can kind of rank or play a role in how someone perceives either employment or self-employment. And so then we've got boxes on the right. Now, if that element in the middle is really important to you, then you'd sort of skew toward the right and you'd tick a box on the right. If it's not so important to you, you'd skew to the left and tick a box on the left. If you're skewing heavily toward the right consistently, then that means that business ownership might actually better suit your goals and what you're looking for in your income generation. If you're skewing more to the left than anything else, then it may be actually that the good old 9 to 5 is going to be better suited to what it is that you're looking for. So maybe we just sort of take these turn about and chat about these from our perspective, because we've started so many people in businesses. And so these are the things that people often say to us. The people that we speak to skew heavily to the right on these sorts of things. And so flexibility, I'm going to lump flexibility and work-life balance together, because I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Flexibility in your schedule, because as an employee, you clock on at 9, you clock off at 5. Hopefully, you've got an employer who is a little flexible to your needs. But if you're a business owner, then flexibility is you control your own schedule. You work whenever you want. You don't work when you want. And work-life balance sort of often dovetails that quite strongly when we're talking to people who are looking at business ownership. And often it's that they are seeking a better work-life balance to work in around things like family or health commitments, things like that. And so the assessment here, the self-assessment to do if you're listening.
12 months ago, I worked in a corporate for 12 years. So I worked in a corporate for 12 years. And as a regional manager, I had to leave home in the dark, get home in the dark. There was no flexibility. I had responsibility, had to be there. Never got to see my kids in daylight hours for most of the, 5-day work week, so to speak. And then there was weekends as well. Whereas for me, one of the big attractions and what drove me into having my own business was to be able to have that control. One of my goals, and literally what I did when I first put my first business with James, was it was my job then to drop the kids to school every morning, because I'd never done that. And my oldest was in grade 7. And so for me, those first two were really critical in me making a big change.
Yeah. And so for anyone listening, the self-assessment is just asking yourself, how important to you are these things? Right now, you might love the the security or the knowledge in, hey, I get up at 6:30 a.m. every single morning. I go through my morning routine. I've got to be in the car by 7:18 a.m. and then I get to work by 8 a.m. and I work all day, and then at 5:01 I leave, right? And if that kind of structure is what you like in life, then don't own a business. Because it's the opposite when you own your own business. You can be on call. You have control over when you're on call and you're not on call. But you and I are going to be very honest in this chat about the difficulties and challenges and adversity of owning a business. And straight up, one of those is that you're kind of on call all of the time, particularly in startup phase. So flexibility doesn't mean you get to work less. It just means you can control to a degree the hours that you're working. And you can indeed work them around things like family or, supporting, members of your family who have health concerns, taking them to doctor's appointments, taking an hour off to go and see your kid run the school cross country. You can do that as a business owner where, as an employee, you're having to ask someone for leave. So you've got to have a look at what is more important to you.
Yep, absolutely. Autonomy, what do you mean by that one?
Do you want to make your own decisions? But that's the sexy version. because I think what we followed it up with is the important part. Are you prepared to take responsibility for those decisions, right? Autonomy is working by yourself on your own. You're in control. You get to make the decisions. You get to call the shots, right? And I guess, are you a team player or are you a soloist? That's something to think about. Autonomy is really, it comes down to, do you like working at your own pace on your own things without necessarily having someone watching over your shoulder and micromanaging your every move, right? Now, if autonomy is really important to you, unless you've got the perfect boss, you're never going to find that in a 9-to-5, right? But again, if you like the rigor of having someone else, just simply set a work plan for you, then you're going to hate business ownership, because the first thing you realize is there's no plan unless you create it, right? Yeah. So think about, is autonomy something that's important to you or not? And then responsibility, are you prepared to take it? Because when you own a business, the buck stops with you, full stop. Ain't no passing that buck to nobody else. And if you like responsibility, if you're someone who's sort of, maybe climbed through the ranks of your 9-to-5, seeking that next step of responsibility, that next, task that sits on your shoulders, if you seek that out, then maybe you'll get to a point where in your 9-to-5s, there's not another layer of that you can get to. And so maybe a business is something that might kind of quench your thirst for that responsibility. I think those two really go hand in hand.
Absolutely. I've got 2 guys I'm working with at the moment out of a corporate setting. I've worked in the same company for years. And they've got to that point, where it's like, I'm ready for a change. I want to do my thing. I've had to toe the company line for the last 20 years. I've been doing this. I've been in a structure, in a set regime. And I guess for a lot of people coming out of defence, same thing. They've been in a set thing. Every minute of every day is very structured. And I know we have people that work in our organisation out of that sort of setting that, you know what, this is great now. I'm in charge of my work week. I used to have this saying in my wallet, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I think as a business owner, that's exactly what we're talking about here. Is everything hinges on what how you perform and what you decide to pick up and carry.
Yeah. I think if we micro pause on that statement, that's such an important one. If it's going to be, it's up to me. We talk a lot in our network about the difference between an employee mindset and a business owner mindset. If you're trying to weigh up what suits you better, think about where your mindset sits on this question. Who is responsible for the outcomes of your life?
Yep.
If to that question you think, oh, well, my boss or the government that makes decisions or a hierarchy larger than me, then you probably are suited to the mechanism that is employment. If your answer to that question is more, well, it's me. I'm the one responsible for getting outcomes in my life. I'm the one that gets out of bed every morning and is in charge of the decisions that I make. I control my destiny. If that's you, then you probably already know you struggle in a 9-to-5, and that self-employment might actually be your way to set yourself free a little bit and to be able to actually stretch your legs on giving yourself permission to actually take agency over your life.
Excellent. Well, I guess we've been talking about structure and control, which is what we were just talking on. So a lot of these topics are interlinked.
Oh, I think they're all interlinked, right?
Yeah.
I think that structure and control are part of everything else we've already talked about. Structure in a business is not the same as structure in employment. Structure in employment is like somebody else's structure, right? Yes. You've got to be prepared to toe the line with what somebody else wants the structure to be. Structure in business is whatever you set it up to be. Now, don't get me wrong, you need structure in business. That's called systems, and without systems, you are at risk of failure very quickly. So you need structure, but it's a different kind. You're in charge of that structure. And so control, again, is control over time, schedule, control over your daily activities. If you're someone who can self-motivate, even when things are tough, then business ownership might suit you. If you're someone who finds it easier to become motivated by others around you, then self-employment, particularly for that first sort of 6 to 12 months whilst you're building it on your own, are probably going to feel quite lonely. And so structure, control, those sorts of elements are very much focused on how you want to operate yourself.
Yep. The next one's one I love, growth potential. Like, coming from a corporate background as an employee, it was very clear how high you could go versus, so like for me, the next step was state manager, which meant I lived on the road. And that was not something I wanted to do, and I guess same, say in a defence force setting, if you're in the defence force, there's a very clear structure and the path to growth means this, and the price as an individual you have to pay, in a sense, to get to that. Would you mind sharing a bit on, so on the other side of the ledger, as self-employment business ownership, what does growth potential mean?
Well, what is growth potential? It is uncapped. It is uncapped and it is determined by you. And so, I've spent 15 years helping people start businesses, right? And I have worked with everybody on the spectrum. If we have a spectrum and we say these are people who wanted to start businesses that just simply paid the bills so that they could support their family versus people who started a business to grow a $100 million empire, I've worked with everybody. And you just have to be clear on where you sit, right? There's no right or wrong, but you have to be clear on where you sit. Now, there's a certain point on this spectrum, however, where a 9-to-5 cuts out and can no longer give you what you want, right? A 9-to-5 where you're the employee, you're never going to earn $100 million unless you're the CEO of one of the top 100 companies in Australia. That's just the reality and the limitation that can be on an employment role. So if you're just simply looking to get by and just support the family by paying the bills, and growth potential isn't important to you, then potentially employment is better suited to that particular goal. But if you want to unlimit yourself, then the only option you have is entrepreneurship.
The last one is a big one, financial risk. The big one, I think, that is a fear often for people not going to the right-hand side of the ledger.
Yeah, I agree.
Which which in a genuine open thing, I would argue with. I think there's financial risk both ways if you make poor decisions. So when it comes to financial risk, I guess firstly, let's talk about the left-hand side. The employment might suit goals. What are we referring to here when it comes to financial risk?
There's lots of reasons why your employment might actually come to an end. We're speaking to a lot of people these days who, they are literally saying these words to you, Justin, my job isn't secure as it once was. And, there's redundancies happening in this company and I don't know if I'm going to be next. And so I think, 10 years ago, we used to think that a job was safe as houses. It was like bricks and mortar. It was really safe. And what we are actually seeing right now play out in the marketplace is people feeling less safe and secure in their day job. And I think that's something I've not seen before, which is a really interesting change and trend that's occurring. So, I think financial risk is you could lose your job. At no fault of your own. Financial risk on the left-hand side is also, employment, you're capped at what you can earn. And I guess the question is, can you earn enough to actually pay all your family's bills? Do you and your partner, or if it's just you, do you combined or just you make enough to pay all your bills? Because, there's a risk there that you might not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like we're saying, with the growth potential, the risk financially is you're capped in a job to a certain income level.
Yeah, true. I mean, to also just be completely, balanced in the conversation, there probably is more security in a job, right? You're on a contract, you're in a salaried position, or you're in a casual position, but you've got an undertaking as to the hours you're being given a week. You can probably budget easier. You know what you're going to make. You can then plan to live within your means. So if we're going to make this a balanced conversation, it comes down to how you view risk and what your appetite for risk is, right? And there's so many sayings around what is it, the higher the risk, the higher reward. It's true across everything in life, right? The higher the risk, the higher reward. And so in business, if we flip and talk about the right-hand side, are you prepared to accept that there is more risk, but there's potentially some more upside in there for you if you can bear that risk?
Yes, excellent. That's good. Well, I think that really covers helping people understand how to use the little tool.
Yeah, I would be really interested. I wish this was real time because I'd love to actually be able to stop and say to anybody listening, hey, where are you sitting on this? And is this helpful? But I think just to reiterate, I think if you're skewing to the right, then it's just an indicator that maybe business ownership might be better suited to how you prefer to work. If you're skewing to the left, then employment might be where you're a little more comfortable.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that brings us to the third question in evaluating a change. Are you prepared? Are you prepared? So what do we mean by this, Rhiannon? What are we digging into here?
Oh, this is my favourite one. This is where we get honest, right? Because most of the time when people talk about self-employment entrepreneurship, we've done a really good job in Australia at glorifying the act of starting a business. The reality is that there are a lot that fail and that don't make it. And so what we mean by are you prepared is, are you prepared to work? Are you prepared to commit? Are you prepared to go all in? Are you prepared to learn all the skills you're going to need to learn? Are you prepared to push yourself? Are you prepared to dig deep, even on the days you don't want to get out of bed? Because the reality is that those that find themselves in business ownership that aren't prepared to do all of those things find themselves back in employment. And so I think that the reason we've put this question in here and the reason that I'm not mincing my words here is because there's no point jumping into business ownership if you try it for 6 months and it doesn't work, but where you didn't really consider it fully before you jumped. Right? Because there's a lot to lose. There's a lot of time and money lost, even in 6 months. And that's not to say you shouldn't try things. And that's not to say that you can't fail and fail fast and pick yourself up and try something else. applaud all of those things, but it is to just encourage you to be really honest with yourself in answering this question. Are you prepared to work hard? Because if you believe the highlight reel that social media is, it's telling you business ownership is easy, and it just ain't, right? It just ain't.
I tell people almost every day that starting your own business, whatever it is, will probably be one of the toughest things you ever do in the beginning.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's why I grabbed this picture, because to me, this picture really sums it up. There are great rewards to having your own business or to having your dream job, right? Same story. And for both, I think you really got to evaluate is what we were talking about earlier, that there's a cost. There's commitment. You know, you don't go and do a mountain climb if you've been a couch potato for the last 4 years, right? You go and you put in the time and effort to get prepared mentally and physically to do it. Same in a business. And one of the things I want to encourage people is if you're not in a good place mentally, or, you know, even possibly in a relationship with spouse, stuff like that, not a good time to jump into, say, a business or the wrong job choice through a knee-jerk reaction, right? Because the toughness of a bad choice is going to exacerbate the situation you're in. So I think whenever you make a change, one of the key things in life I've seen is to be in a good place. Make sure you're in a good place mentally, ready for that change, because change is always uncomfortable. It always brings pressure, and you want to give yourself the best chance of success.
Yeah.
Prepare for it.
There's so many sayings around, the challenges that come with new business ownership. But one that I really love is the person that succeeds is just the person that can stay in the game the longest.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, you don't have to be Einstein. You don't have to know it all. Right. And we're going to talk about, in the second session of this, we're going to talk about different ways that you can start a business, even if you don't know it all. Right. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be prepared to commit. You have to be prepared to put the slog in. If you're going to go to the gym every single day with a particular health goal in mind, you can't skip out 3 days of the week and then expect the outcome, right? Business ownership is exactly the same. If you start a business and you want a certain outcome, you can't skip out 3 days of the week and still expect the outcome. You got to be prepared to put the work in order to get there. So I think this is a slide to really, let's not over-glorify what business ownership is. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be honest about how tough it is. I think that the statistics of failure are telling us how tough it can be. And so I think that actually putting some solid thought into, are you prepared, is one of the wisest things you can do in your decision-making process.
Excellent. Well, just pulling all this together now. So 3 key questions that we've looked at to really evaluate. So just one last tool to leave with people, this framework to help people with the right decision. So I'll let you guide us through this, Rhiannon.
I love this.
This was I'll be honest, this was your brainwave.
I just wanted to make this really easy for anybody listening to actually follow along, self-assess in real time with us. I mean, I don't know about you, Justin, but I have sat through so many boring webinars where you just get slide after slide after slide of useless information. I wanted to make it a little bit more fun, and I actually really remember reading the Choose Your Own Adventure books when I was a much younger person, and I liked that I felt in control of those, and I wanted to bring that to this discussion because this is all about control. This is about control over where you want to go. And so this, for anybody who's listening or watching, is your choose your own adventure, quite literally. And we start at 1. Where do you want to go? What's that bigger picture? And remember, it's normal that a lot of people haven't ever thought about that question. So break it down, take the pressure of the big question off and just ask yourself, what does a good life look like in 5-10 years' time for me? And depending on your answer, you either move along to question 2 or If it's not really quite clear yet where you want to go, or if where you want to go is more aligned with, the security structure, mundaneness of a 9 to 5, then, you drop out the bottom. And a 9 to 5 is going to better suit you and your family at this particular time. And also, by the way, you could do this every, once a month, and you can get a different answer at different times depending on the circumstances of your life. So if you drop out at question 1, 2, or 3 today, that doesn't mean that that's a no forever. It means that maybe it's not suited right now. And there will be other times in your life where you'll drop out into employment because that's a much better option for you and your family now, and you're not ready for business ownership. And that's not a bad or a good thing. That's a relevant to you thing, which is the most important outcome we want from today, is that you find the answer that's most relevant to you. So secondly, what are you comparing? That was our sliding scale of what is important to you in terms of your work and how you generate an income for you and your family versus what isn't super important. And we included, obviously, the elements of business ownership that a lot of people link with business ownership. So if you're skewed more to the right, then business ownership may be a match. And if you're skewed more to the left, then employment's going to suit you better at this point of your life. So then we get to 3, which is the one we just finished discussing. Are you prepared? I don't think we have to rehash that. I think we were pretty clear. You have to be ready to put the work in. And of course, if you answered yes to all those 3 questions, then at this stage, that's not a decision. That's an indicator. And that is just an indicator that you should probably give yourself the opportunity of more research and more time to actually look into this idea of business ownership further.
So good, so good. And after looking at this and putting it together, there was 2 sentences that I sort of wrote down, and I'll just read it out. Good decisions do not lead everyone to the same conclusion. Good decisions lead people to the right conclusion for them. And that's what this is all about. So coming to the end of all of this, continue your research. So next steps, a little notepad here. Next step, I think for anyone watching this, is to watch part 2, because we're going to dive into how to do your research on a business. If you've got to the end of that pathway and business ownership is a possibility, you think, hey, this could be interesting. There's a whole range of different ways to get into a business. There's no one way, once again, that's right for everyone. So in our next video, we're going to look at the 3 key ways of getting into a business and then how to research those to work out what's the best for you and how to find a good one. So we hope you'll join us for the second episode of this. And Rhiannon, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a chat with us today.
Pleasure. I'm looking forward to diving into the 3 options for getting into business ownership and exploring what they look like.